hierdie partytjie raak al hoe beter.
Oh, wow. Greetings, fellow geeks. Welcome to another episode of Geek Likes Me with me, Drake and Redfuck. Today on the show, we have Rourke Swanepoel from Forever Art Gaming, and you're here to talk to us a little bit more about a new game that you guys are going to publish, and soon you're going to have a launch for it as well.
Yes.
Called
Kickstarter. Trade Warz.
Trade Warz. Trade Warz. Yes, Trade Warz.
Yes.
I see the board's already set up. Before we get started, tell us a little bit more about Trade Warz. What type of a game is it? What can you expect from the game?
Well, essentially, Trade Warz is a game that we started developing quite a few years ago. And then we decided to use Forever Art, the Forever Art publishing brand, in terms of Forever Art Gaming, to try and publish the game via a Kickstarter campaign. So this would be our first gaming product in the Forever Art series, and then we also will start pulling in other games. But as for Trade Warz itself, it's a large-scale, it's a resource management game combined with strategy, and also there's brings in elements of economy, intellectual property, because you've got a tech tree that you need to support. You've got topography that causes choke points and things like that. You've got a developing map. As the game progresses, objectives occur. So you don't have preset objectives at the beginning of the game. They actually happen and start being built as the game progresses. And so the idea would be then to dominate this little continent which we call Zaglagon. As you can look at the map here, the map is based on the idea that it looks like a strategy map of the old strategos in the medieval times.
Yeah.
Okay, so the whole theme of the map, or the theme of the board, is to resemble an ancient strategy map. So we've got all your movements of your troops, troop trays. You've got settlements like these, and you can see like that. You've got resource counters, which you put down on the board for which resource you want to pull. You've got, each player has his own capital city, which also has a purpose in the game, because that is where you essentially house your intellectual property as the game progresses. And you've got, as you can see, what makes it also a bit different is the fact that you have topography. We've got mountain ranges, and we've got bodies of water which become impassable, and then you've got these resource tiles. Let me see if I can get one out here. So the resource tiles can pop out of the game.
Wait a minute, so you can actually build this map as you want it?
Yes.
I thought this was preset, so you can actually put them wherever you want.
Exactly. You get a whole stack of these, and you get a few tiles that are dedicated to your topography. Wow. And then as you set up the game, you place them at random into the slots. So every time that you play the game, it's a different game.
Different map.
It's a different map, and you have to employ different strategies every time.
I can honestly say I have not seen that on a board game before.
Just as the background of the game, the backstory, the continent is called Zadladon, and that in effect means it's a Maasai word. Yeah, infinity. Okay, in Somali. So the idea was this is the 8th continent that was discovered but kept secret, and then you get all these kings that discovered this place. Now they want to exploit it. But it's Zadladon, so your combinations of gaming is infinite. And because you place your resource tiles at random, every time you begin at your city, the resources that's available to you is different, so your strategy changes. Your topography that's close to you also affects your game. For some cities would start off, then they're quite open and easy to attack, but you've got lots of resources. But then some cities would start off at points where they're quite cloistered away and guarded. So that'll change your strategy during the game. And that's just in the game setup. in terms of gameplay, you can win the game. Victory conditions can be achieved through military conquest, command of intellectual property by commanding by dominating the tech tree, or you can win via economic ways and actually just ruling the continent because you're the richest and you own everything.
Of course, why not?
So there's a lot of different elements in the game that that people might find buy-into and appeal to. So if you're an aggressive player, you can actually play aggressively and you can focus on military type of stuff, and you can try to win the game like that. But if you are more the conservative player, you can actually hang back and win economically or politically. So it gives you a lot of options, and that just makes the permeability of the game a lot more. So you've got more iterations that you can play endlessly. It is infinite.
Yeah,
that's the game in a nutshell.
So I see a lot of things happening on the board. Obviously, those are your castles, things that you build, which isn't a normal thing. This wheel that you have over here, okay, this is a major play.
Yes.
inside the game.
Okay, so what you see there, this is the player's mat, essentially, your resource dials. So you've got this thing does three functions. It commands you can actually track your resources, which is gold, lumber, and stone, and wheat. So it tracks that. And then also it keeps track of the year cycle, the play cycle of the game. And it also keeps track of the actions being done by the player. How the game works at the turn base, it's a cyclical turn. And as you can just look at the board again, the turn it is divided into years. Okay, so it's a year-based game. But then the year is then divided into 5 seasons. Now, we didn't just choose 5 seasons because 5 is cool and it's a bit different. There's actually method behind the madness. The seasons have a point. So in each year cycle, a player gets a chance to do one action, which, for example, march, or for example, add resources. Each player can do one action per season. Okay? And then the season commences and each player gets a turn per season. And then as the year commences through, when all the seasons are done, the year ends, and then you start pulling, the whole thing resets essentially, and then you start pulling your dividends and the things that you've gathered after the year. And then the cycle starts again. You clear the board and you start again from the start. Okay, so...
I'm very sorry. I'm
Yes?
very interested because I see summer, I see fall, I see winter, I see spring, and then I see grace.
Exactly.
What is
Grace
grace?
is exactly what it says. As I said, the seasons have functionality. You'll see that there are red seasons, blue seasons, and grace is like a neutral season. In the red season, spring and summer, it's optimal to march. For example, when you march in spring and summer, you use the red dice, which is loaded with high numbers, so it increases your marching distance. So when it's a sunny day, you go full distance. It's a bit windy, it scares the horses, you only go 2. Or it's a crappy rainy day and it's muddy and you only go 1. But that's the summer. If you then try and march in the winter, which is the blue seasons, then you can hand me that dice.
Yeah.
Then you use the blue movement dice. And you'll see on the blue movement dice, there's snow and blizzards, and there's only one sunny day.
Yeah.
So marching in the winter and in fall is not advantageous. But now that is where your strategy comes in. When players start exploiting other players, and they see, okay, I can force you not to be able to move in summer, and I force you to move into winter. So the seasonal thing, there's a strategy element to them, there's a movement element to them. And then when you get to grace, it's a neutral season. In this wonderful continent, everybody is very gentlemanlike, and they decide to go, listen, in grace, it's a period of grace, we shall honor our gods, and we shall not march, we shall not fight. Grace is a period of production. But you can also use that in your strategy. If you can force someone not to be able to do graceful things in grace because his option counters are done, then you're also playing, you're taking him into a point where that's his weakness and you're exploiting that.
Of course.
So there's a big strategy thing going on here as well in terms of the cycles of the year. So that's just the movement count, the controls of the game essentially per player.
Okay. Now I see a whole bunch of different, different factions. How many total factions are in the game?
There are 6 factions in the game, which is the amount of players that the game can take in total. You can play 2 players up to 6 players. Obviously, the amount of players that you add to the continent during a game actually affects the strategies that you'll use.
I can imagine on a
and
map
also
like
the
this.
time that the game takes. Each faction is just based on, currently it's for the first game, it's just color. Each faction has a little coat of arms. So there's the bear faction, which is called Feronim.
Wolf.
And it's got a little bear totem. These totems also have a functionality. They don't just look pretty. And then we've got Wolverston. So each faction has a different coat of arms and just representing the color that you're playing with. As an expansion, we will start using the totems for each faction, and they'll actually have a functionality. That's an expansion that we're planning on the game called Honoring the Gods.
Yeah, of course.
And past certain amount of upgrades, your totem will start giving your house specific benefits that's house specific. For example, your people like riding horses, and then you'll have advantages in that. So then that actually becomes a feature in the game, but that's an expansion, an expanded version of the game.
Okay. So just quickly, obviously your tech tree is like the cards that you can buy, either military or economy or defense.
Yes.
That you buy through upgrading something like a university. Explain to me just quickly how something like combat would work, because I see a lot of swords and shields and thingies like that.
Okay.
How would combat in a game like this work? It's not just plainly, so if I build a very strong military force and you build very strong defensive force, how does a battle resolve in something like that?
Okay, so we obviously don't like dice a lot, so we do have dice, but we try to remove the dice and add a bit of a different flavor in terms of the combat cards. So let me just see if there's a battle card. So the battle cards, each player gets 6 of these, and as you can see, each card has a certain strength, a block and a death blow or a kill function on it. Okay, now you get 6 of these, and essentially what you do is you shuffle them up, you get a random effect. And then when 2 armies meet, anytime when 2 armies fall into the same space on the board, let's just get an army there. If anybody like that, if you would move into that space, it's automatically a combat. Okay. Now how that then would work is each player would go, they would shuffle their combat deck, they would strip the top one, and then they would take the top card and they would keep it in their hand. Then you have to start and estimate what the other guy has. So that's where you start, gambling and playing against the player instead of just playing the game, because you need to know the person. Now, when the combat then starts, the combat cards are revealed. This is now without any modifiers. We'll talk about the modifiers now. The combat cards are revealed and your strengths are totals. Each army unit is 1 strength, and then you add that to the strength total on the card, and that then will determine the guy with the most strength wins the combat. And then there's a certain bunch of rules that kick in. What happens to the guy that didn't win? And each combat, whether it's defensive or offensive, wins you a victory point. Now, what happens if you are a weaker opponent and you're outnumbered? Obviously, you prefer to try and modify your army, especially if you don't play a pure military game and you've got a lot of little guys and you want to just attack everyone. If you're playing the more head game and you're actually doing the intellectual property thing and you have command of the tech tree, then you would actually want to use modifiers. Now, how the modifiers work, before you can buy a modifier, each player has his own city when he starts off. And the city, as you can see, the city base has 3 slots in it. Okay, so each of those slots represents a university. The 3 universities are defense, economics for green, and then red is offense, military sciences. Now these 3 universities are represented by these little castles. There's a blue one for defense, a red one for military, and a green one for economy. So if you want to start buying unlocks, you need a university so people can understand how those unlocks work. So if you want to buy a level 1 unlock, you have to upgrade your university first using a build function during a season. And then each time you want to have fancier unlocks, you need to upgrade. So for example, now I've got the economy one, level 1. There's defense level 1, but now I want to go a bit fancier on defense. I will study and go to level 2. So each university has an upgradability of 4 levels, and that determines the complexity of the modifier that you can add to your armies, or your economy, or your defenses. And then you can add different types of things like improved shields. Where else do we have another one? Defensive tactics. And then there's some economy upgrades as well. Can I have that one, please? No, the card, the one with the anvil on. Yes. Here's this is also defensive. It's like improved steel. And then here's an economy upgrade, superior logistics. Okay. So that all gives you different advantages during the battle, and the levels of the upgrade is indicated at the bottom of the card. Okay. So then these modifiers during a battle can be added, the extras that these things bring to your army, like +3 extra strength. Can be added to your army before, during the combat. So that these are cards that are displayed. So that improves your army as well. But then another way that you can actually add to an army is to add morale cards. Now the morale cards, it's like an instant.
Oh, okay.
So during a combat they stay hidden, and while the guys still have the combat cards in hand, they have the option to add these modifiers to their combat cards by guessing what the other guy might have or might not have.
Okay.
And then when you review, you actually inflated your army's capabilities, and then you can win in that manner. So that's essentially how the combat works.
This seems like a really awesome game. I would love to play this game once it comes out. When is your Kickstarter campaign actually set to launch?
We are launching before the end of this year. We've already started filming our promo videos, getting all our promotional media together for the campaign. We've already outlaid our Kickstarter strategy in terms of stretch goals and rewards for people that actually help fund this thing. And we've already done a proper manufacturing planning. The version that you're seeing here, it's about version 4 of the whole game. We've been working on it for quite a while, so we've rehashed the units. As you can see, there's a lot of 3D type of units, which implies injection molding by the wazoo, and that's obviously adds cost to the board. And we don't really want to make a game that's insanely expensive like certain other games of this scale. That's unaffordable. So we had to rehash the production plan and the manufacturing plan through a couple of times. And we've come to a point now where we finalize it. We know what kind of tooling we're going to need, how much that tooling is going to cost. We've already got logistics in place. So we are pretty much geared for getting, for the launch of Kickstarter, at the end of this year. And when it's successful, we're ready to pull the trigger to start production, because we've got all our ins and outs sorted on that.
That's great. So I personally think that this is an awesome game. Thank you for inviting me to come and review the game for you guys. I think it's a brilliant game, and I wish you guys all the best of luck with the launch of it.
We shall need all the luck we can get.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. No, thank you. And yes, like I said, we are Forever Art Gaming with Trade Warz, and I love Geeks Like Me.
Thank you very much for joining us for another episode, guys. Watch out and keep a lookout for the game called Trade Warz. It's going to be launching pretty soon, and by the looks of it, it is going to be something that is really worth investing in and something worth playing, and something that is locally made, not something that you get a lot, a local South African game that is definitely going to be worth playing. So till next time, game on and geek on.